In this video, I am going to show you how I created and used a CSV file to enable me to distribute unique settings to one or more Brother devices. To do this, I used an actual Brother device, a Windows laptop, the Brother Mass Deployment tool, and Microsoft Excel. Both the Brother device and Windows laptop were connected to my network. I downloaded the Mass Deployment tool from the Brother support website at support.brother.com. I then found my Brother device, and from the Downloads area, I scrolled down the page until I found and downloaded the Mass Deployment tool. The Mass Deployment tool downloaded as a compressed zip file. I extracted the contents to my computer. In this part of the video, I used a Brother device to help me create my CSV template file. A template file that used the following settings: contact and location, sleep time, toner save and quiet mode, as well as a paper type setting for the multi-purpose tray. Under each column heading, I could then type a different setting for each Brother device. To do this, first I needed to hard code these settings to at least one Brother device from its embedded web server. After authenticating to it with its admin password, I went to configure the contact and location. Since I was only creating a template, I did not use real values. This may seem a bit strange right now, however, it will make more sense later on in the video. After saving these settings, I then configured the sleep time. Since this setting expected a number, I left the default as 1. After saving it, I proceeded to enable both the toner save and quiet mode options. After saving them, I went on to configure the multi-purpose tray. To make it easier to recognize later, I selected the paper type, recycled paper. I then saved this setting and was able to close the web browser. After configuring my actual device, it was time to use the Mass Deployment tool to export these configurations into a settings file. The Mass Deployment tool referred to this as a backup. To do this, I opened the Mass Deployment tool folder, then went into the Mass Deployment tool subfolder. From there, I found and ran the Mass Deployment tool utility. For the purpose of making a deployment file, I did not need to import any BRadmin settings, and therefore selected this option. After clicking the OK button, I got the Mass Deployment tool to search for my Brother device. After it was found, I selected my Brother device, then clicked the Add button. In the device password entry field, I typed its admin password. To allow me to export my device's settings, I needed to go into another section of the Mass Deployment tool I did this by clicking the Send Files drop-down menu and selecting the Backup Settings option. From the Backup Settings window, I told the Mass Deployment tool where to save my settings file to. If you are following this video, I recommend using a location on the same computer running the Mass Deployment tool and not a network location, NAS drive, or external USB storage device. Since I only made changes to a few settings, I did not need a full device backup. Instead, I selected the sections that contained the ones I did want, which existed within the General and Printer sections. Incidentally, these were also the same and similar names used by my device's web server. This tick box prevented the export from including any fixed settings, such as a static IP address, that may have caused problems when applied to more than one device within the same network. I did not need to select it for the settings I exported. However, for good practice, I used it anyway. To begin the settings export, I clicked the Backup button. The backup was successful. If you are following these instructions and get an error message instead, check that you entered the device admin password correctly and that you are not trying to back up your device to a network location, NAS drive, or USB storage device. So far, I have created a file that included the settings I exported from my brother device. I could, if I wanted to, use it as a backup file to restore my device's settings. However, unless I did something extra to this file, it would have sent the same settings to both of them. I did not want to do this. Instead, I wanted to send them unique settings. To do this, I needed to modify my exported settings file and create a CSV template, which then enabled me to send unique settings to both of my brother devices. Before I could do this, I needed to make my settings file responsive, which I did by using another brother utility called the Setting File Editor. From it, I clicked the Open File button, then found and selected the settings file that I recently exported. Before I could open it, I needed to type the admin password for the device it was exported from. From this utility, I was able to see all the settings that the Mass Deployment tool included in the export. To allow me to change them using values saved into a CSV file, I needed to enable something called the Maply function. To do this, I clicked the Advanced option from the toolbar, selected the Create Dynamic Referencing option, then clicked the OK button. Here is where I was able to make my settings responsive based on values written into a CSV file. Before doing this, I wanted to remove all the unwanted settings that the Mass Deployment tool also exported. I started by unselecting all the settings within the General section, then reselected the settings that I did want. I then removed all the settings within the Printer section, and again reselected the ones I did want. Lastly, I needed to remove a few more settings that existed within a section called Special that the mass deployment tool also exported. Now it was time to make the settings I did want responsive to settings written into a CSV file. To do this, I re-expanded the general section and added the keywords contact and location into the dynamic Maply keyword column. These were the same words used in the CSV file as the column headings. If you are following this video, the values you write in this column will automatically be applied to your CSV file. I will explain how to create this file soon. If I chose not to add a keyword into these fields, the values shown here would have remained hard-coded within my settings file, meaning it would have sent the same contact and location values to all brother devices. Next, I created the CSV column heading for the sleep time setting. To find the print-related settings, I collapsed the general section, then expanded the printer section. I created the CSV column headings for the toner save and quiet mode settings. Lastly, I needed to find the paper tray settings section and added a CSV column heading for the multi-purpose tray paper type. With the settings complete, I saved them into a new file. Then assigned it with a security password. At this stage, the settings file was responsive. What I then needed to do was create the CSV file. To do this, I needed to click the Export button from the Brother Setting File Editor utility and clicked the Create a New Deployment Maply Profile Template option. After clicking the Export button, I named it Profile and saved it into the same location as the settings file. I was now able to close the Brother Setting File Editor and Mass Deployment tool. At this stage, I had the following 3 files. What I needed to do now was add some settings into the CSV file. In the first row, I could see a range of brother-related settings. If your CSV file looks something like this, with all the text merged into a single cell, it means that it has not opened properly. To correct this, you will need to temporarily make a change to your computer's settings. There is more than one way to do this. However, I will show you what I believe is the easiest. First, close Microsoft Excel, then open the Windows Control Panel. Click the Change Date, Time or Number Formats link, then click the Additional Settings button. From the List Separator field, change whatever symbol is shown, in this example it is a semicolon, into a comma. Apply these new settings, then close the Windows Control Panel. Reopen the CSV file back into Excel. Before I typed anything into it, I converted the CSV file into an Excel format. Converting it into an Excel format reduces most unintentional formatting problems that can occur when updating a CSV file directly from Microsoft Excel. I will show you how one of these formatting problems can happen later. The first 2 columns were for the model name and serial number for each device. They were not required fields, so I left them blank. Despite this, I was not able to delete either column. In this column, I typed the word network, followed by an underscore, then IPv4, as shown on the screen. This is because my brother device was connected to my network. If I were to send settings to a USB connected device, I would have typed USB instead. This is where I could have put the MAC address of my brother device. However, it was not a required field. These two columns tell the mass deployment tool where to send the now responsive settings file to. In this example, I used my device's IP address. Here is where I told the mass deployment tool that my brother device was protected by an admin password. To do this, I was required to type the word true in lowercase. The deployment would have failed if this word was in capital letters. To stop Excel from automatically capitalizing the word true, I needed to type a hyphen symbol before it. This is also the same rule when using the word false. This is one of the reasons I converted the CSV file into an Excel format. Excel will remember this format, whereas if I were to close and reopen a CSV file, the words true and false would revert back to capital letters. This is where I typed the admin password for my brother device. The schema section needed to know the name of something called a JSON schema. I found this in the schema folder from the mass deployment tool download and opening one of these two schema files. If you do not know which schema file to use, you can find this information in here. In this example, I was using an MFCL 6800DW, which at the time of creating this video used schema A. This is what the schema file looked like in Notepad++. Information about its version number was here, which was number 4. Therefore, I typed the number 4 here. This was the name and location of the settings file I recently exported and edited. Since I put all the relevant files in the same folder, I only needed to type its name and file extension. This was the password used to protect my settings file. Since the settings file had the extension .edpk and not JSON, I typed the word false in lowercase in the JSON file column. These columns were not needed, however, I could not remove them. Now I was ready to add values for the settings I exported into the settings file. I started with the contact and location. Within the sleep time field, I needed to type a number between 1 and 99. I found this range within the schema file. Where a setting needed to be on or off, I used the words true and false. Again, these needed to be in lowercase. This is where I specified the paper type for the multipurpose tray. Since I originally selected this option from a drop-down menu when I pre-configured my device earlier, I needed to type the word recycled in a specific way. This is why I pre-configured my brother device earlier, so I could see how the value needed to be typed. Alternatively, I could have searched the schema file for it and found all the other supported paper types as well. Please note that these setting names are always in English when typing them into your CSV file. After populating my Excel file, I converted it back into a CSV format. I now had an Excel file and a CSV file. I recommend that you always work from the Excel file and convert it into a CSV format just before deployment. If you needed to change your computer's original list separator setting earlier, don't forget to change it back. To deploy settings from a CSV file, I needed to use the command line version of the mass deployment tool. I found it in the setting command folder of the mass deployment tool download. Since it was a command line utility, I could not simply double-click the exe file to make it run. Instead, I needed to pass it some parameters using something like an administrator elevated Windows command prompt. To start with, I needed to call the settingcmd.exe file. Then pass a parameter to agree to the end-user license agreement. This parameter started with the words EULA in lowercase, followed by 2 hyphens, then the word agree. This was a one-off process. I was now ready to deploy device settings from my CSV file. Again, I called the settingcmd.exe file, followed by the parameter maply. I then typed 2 hyphens, followed by the word profile, followed by the name and location of the CSV file. Finally, I needed to pass another parameter telling the mass deployment tool where it could save a CSV log file to. This was done by typing 2 hyphens, then the word result, followed by a location, name, and the extension .csv. I did not need to create this file in advance. Shortly after running this command, the mass deployment tool created it for me. As you can see, the deployment was successful. If you are following this video and see an error message instead, keep watching. I will now list a few common things that can cause deployment problems. CSV formatting errors. These are often unintentionally added when making changes directly to a CSV file and not Excel. To avoid making them, I recommend you always make changes to the Excel formatted document and only convert it back into a CSV file just before deployment. Not using a comma-separated CSV file. The mass deployment tool only supports CSV files that use a comma as the separator. Using the words true or false in capital letters. Misspelling the name of a setting from a drop-down menu. To check, you can find all the brother setting names within your device's schema file. Also remember, they need to be in English. Or using a wrong value. For example, instead of using the number 1 as a device's sleep time, it is written as ONE in letters. Thank you. Since making this video, I have been asked a few questions about this function. I have tried my best to answer them within the description below.